Welcome to Science for Sleepy Minds. I'm glad you're here, exactly as you are, whether you're sleepy already or still carrying a little restlessness in your chest or behind your eyes. If tonight has been long, or your thoughts have been a bit loud, you can let them soften here. This is a quiet place to settle, nothing to solve, nothing to perform. Just a slow, steady voice and a gentle trail of ideas. Tonight, we're going to wander around a warm question, the kind you can hold loosely in your hands without squeezing it too tight. Is the sun alive? Not as a debate, not as a test, just as a soft curiosity. The sun is so familiar to us, so constant, that it can start to feel almost like a presence with personality. And when something feels present, we sometimes wonder about life. About aliveness, about what counts and what doesn't, and why our minds even ask. And as we begin, I want to quietly remind you of something important. It's perfectly okay to fall asleep at any point. You don't need to stay awake for the whole story. You don't need to hold on to every detail. If your attention drifts, if you miss a sentence, if you wake and catch up again, that's all normal. This is designed to be gentle. Sleep can arrive like warmth, like a blanket settling into place. Think of this as relaxation first, learning second. The science is here, yes, but it's here in a softer shape. You're not studying, you're resting and letting an easy stream of understanding flow by like quiet water. If a concept lands in your mind, you can keep it. If it slips past, you can let it go. Either way, you're doing it exactly right. If you enjoy this kind of calm science, and you want more of it another night, you can like and subscribe. And now, you can let that thought fade away, because right now your only job is resting. That's it, resting. Let's start by helping your body remember that it's allowed to unclench. Take a slow inhale, as if you're sipping warm air through a straw. Not a big heroic breath, just a gentle one, and then exhale as if you're letting out a quiet sigh you've been holding all day. Again, inhale softly, and exhale slowly, like you're fogging a window just a little, maybe without even trying. You can keep breathing at your own pace. There's no correct rhythm. Just the feeling of air arriving and leaving, arriving and leaving, like small waves touching the shore and sliding back. As you breathe, see if you can let your forehead smooth out, as if someone has laid the lightest warm cloth across it. Let your eyebrows soften. Let your eyes rest in their sockets, heavy and safe behind closed lids. If your jaw is holding on, let it loosen. Teeth not touching, tongue relaxed. A small quiet space inside your mouth. Now let your shoulders drop by a fraction, not forcing, just allowing, as if you've put down a bag you didn't realize you were carrying. Let that softness travel down your arms, through your elbows, into your wrists, into your hands. Your fingers don't need to hold anything. They can simply exist. Let your breath move down into your chest and belly, and imagine tension there melting like ice in gentle sunlight. Not sudden, not dramatic, just slow, patient, softening. Then let your legs be heavy, resting into the bed. Your calves, your ankles, your feet. Even your toes can relax, like they're sinking into warm sand. There's nothing to do, nothing to fix, nothing to remember perfectly. If thoughts float by, you can watch them the way you might watch slow clouds crossing a quiet sky. You don't have to chase them or wrestle them. They can drift. You can drift. And underneath it all, there's a steady, calm presence, like a gentle glow spreading through your chest. A lantern in fog, not bright, just enough to feel safe. Now, with your body a little softer, let's step into a scene together. Imagine a small observatory at night. It doesn't have to be grand or dramatic. It can be modest, tucked into a quiet hill or a gentle rise of land, away from bright city lights. The air is cool but not sharp, the kind of cool that feels clean in your lungs. There's a faint hum of equipment, like a distant refrigerator in a sleeping house. Maybe you're wearing something warm. Maybe there's a blanket round your shoulders, heavy in a comforting way. The dome above you is open to the sky, and the sky is dark velvet, scattered with stars that look like they're resting all in place. Nothing is rushing. Nothing is urgent. Just quiet points of light, some brighter, some dimmer, all seemingly patient. And somewhere beyond the edge of the world you can't see from here, the sun is still there. It hasn't disappeared. It's simply on the other side of the earth, wrapped in our planet's shadow for a while. It's a comforting thought, in its own gentle way, that the sun is steady even when we can't see it. Like a familiar friend in the next room, still awake, still warm, but letting you sleep. You may notice how easy it is to feel close to the sun, even at night, because you know what it does. You felt it on your skin. You've watched it pour through curtains in the morning, laying bright rectangles on the floor. You've seen it turn a cup of tea into something warmer just by being there. The sun is a star far away, and yet somehow part of daily life, and that closeness is part of why tonight's question feels natural. If something gives warmth and light, if it changes and moves and has cycles, if it sends energy outward like a slow exhale across space, could it be alive in any sense? Or is alive a word meant for something else entirely? We'll take a calm path through it. First, we'll talk about what alive usually means in biology, but in a way that feels gentle, not clinical. And then slowly, we'll compare that to what the sun does. We'll start with simple familiar things and only gradually drift toward deeper ideas. There's no rush. You can float along with the story. So that what does alive mean really? If you think of living things you know well, the first images might be very ordinary. A plant on a windowsill leaning subtly toward the light. A cat stretching, eyes half closed, finding the warmest patch of sun on the floor. Your own body, healing a small cut without you telling it how. Living things in our everyday sense do a few recognizable things. They take in energy, they grow, they repair, they respond to what's around them, and yet, when scientists try to pin down the word alive, it becomes slippery. Not because life is mysterious in a Suki way, but because nature loves gradients and in-between states. Some things are obviously alive and some are obviously not. But there are edges where the definition blurs a little, and our minds start to ask questions, the way you might trace the boundary of waves on a beach and notice it's never exactly the same line twice. Often, biology uses a kind of checklist. Not a harsh checklist, more like a set of gentle signposts, things like cells, metabolism, homeostasis, reproduction, evolution over time. You can think of them as clues that point toward life, rather than iron gates that snap shut. Let's take those clues slowly, like we're walking through a quiet museum with soft lighting, pausing when we want. First, cells. A cell is like a tiny room, a small pocket of insideness separated from the outside world by a delicate boundary. Not a brick wall, more like a flexible skin. Inside that room, chemistry happens, busy, subtle chemistry. Molecules meeting, rearranging, building new shapes, breaking old ones. Cells are one of the most common ways life keeps itself organized. They are little islands of order in the vast ocean of everything else. When you picture cells, you don't need to picture anything complicated. just the sense of a boundary, an interior space and tiny processes happening quietly inside. Like a warm house at night, lights on in a few windows as the world outside stays dark and still. Now, metabolism. Metabolism is a word that can sound heavy, but it's really an everyday idea. Living things take energy in and they translate it. They turn it into usable forms. A plant takes in sunlight and builds sugars. An animal takes in food and builds warmth, movement, and repair. Even when you're sleeping, your body is translating energy, keeping your heartbeat steady, maintaining warmth, tending to the quiet housekeeping of living. So metabolism is like being an energy translator, taking something from outside and turning it into your own kind of motion and structure. It's not about being fast. Some life is very slow. Trees, corals, even bacteria in deep places. Metabolism can be gentle, patient, almost invisible. Then there's homeostasis. Homeostasis is the art of staying within a comfortable range. Your body is always doing this, without you needing to supervise. When you're too warm, you sweat. When you're too cold, you shiver. Your body adjusts the chemistry of your blood, the water in your tissues, the rhythm of your breathing, all to keep you in a zone where your internal processes can continue smoothly. If you imagine life as a candle flame, homeostasis is the glass lantern around it, protecting it from gusts, keeping it steady. Not perfectly still, but steady enough. A living thing is constantly balancing, constantly adjusting, constantly keeping itself from drifting too far one way or another. Then there's reproduction. Life, as we usually see it, makes copies of itself. Not always quickly, not always in ways we notice, but in some form, living systems tend to create new living systems. Seeds become plants, cells divide, animals have offspring. Even if an individual organism doesn't reproduce, it's part of a larger living lineage that does. And over very long periods of time, those lineages change. That's evolution. A slow shifting of patterns across generations, guided by what survives and what doesn't, shaped by environments that are always gently changing. You don't have to hold the details of evolution tonight, just the simple idea that life isn't frozen. It's always quietly adapting. So with those clues in mind, you can feel why the word alive has a particular flavor. It involves boundaries. It involves energy translation. It involves balance. It involves continuity through copying. It involves slow change over time. And now, very softly, we can ask a question that doesn't need an immediate answer. Is life the checklist? Or is life the ongoing dance of change? The way a system keeps itself going, moment after moment, turning energy into continuity. Sometimes our definitions try to be precise, and sometimes our feelings try to be poetic. Tonight, we can let both exist. We can be clear without being rigid. We can wonder without needing to decide everything right away. Now, with that calm foundation, let's bring our attention back to the sun in the most familiar way first. Think of the sun not as a distant object, but as the source of small everyday scenes. Morning light on a wall, soft and pale at first, then brighter. The way sunlight makes dust motes visible, tiny drifting specks like slow snow in a quiet room. The warmth of the sun on your hands when you step outside for a moment. The way a mug becomes warmer if it sits in a patch of light on a table. The way shadows stretch long in late afternoon, making the world feel gentler. The sun anchors the rhythm of so many days. Even if you don't watch it rise, your body knows the cycle. Morning, noon, evening, night. A steady turning, a predictable return. There's something deeply calming about that steadiness, even if you don't think about it consciously. And when we talk about the sun scientifically, one of the simplest truths is that it gives us energy in the form of light. But even that can be said in a soft way. Light is not just brightness. Light is energy travelling. You can picture it as a stream, but also as countless tiny parcels, like little messages crossing the space between the sun and Earth. In physics, those parcels are called photons. The word doesn't have to feel technical. You can think of a photon as a small packet of light energy, a gentle carrier. You don't need to imagine photons as hard pellets. They're not like that. It's more like the idea of a measured whisper, a small definite amount of energy, arriving, touching leaves, touching skin, touching the surface of water, and then being absorbed or reflected, continuing the slow conversation between sunlight and the world. When sunlight lands on your face, it's not just brightness hitting you. It's energy being transferred, softly, continuously, like warmth poured from one place to another. And this is where the sun begins to feel almost lifelike to our minds, because it does something that resembles giving. It sends outward. It affects. It participates in a relationship with everything that turns toward it. From our perspective on Earth, the sun rises and sets. We know this is really the Earth turning, but the experience is still real. The sun becomes the clock hand of the sky. It shows up every day, and our lives arrange themselves around it. Morning routines, school days, work shifts, meals, sleepy evenings. Even if you live where clouds often cover it, you still feel the difference between day and night. The sun shapes the cadence of your world. And yet even that steadiness is not perfectly unchanging. The sun has patterns, it has variations, it has quiet behaviour. Without going into anything intense, you can think of the sun the way you think of weather. Most days the weather is just the weather, a background, a normal presence. But sometimes there are changes, a shift in wind, a thicker cloud, a warmer afternoon. Nothing to panic about, just the natural reality of a living planet with moving air. The sun too has changes. It can have darker spots on its surface at times. It can have cycles that wax and wane over years. It can release bursts of energy now and then. These are not threats in this story. They are simply signs that the sun is not a static lamp. It's a dynamic star, a huge moving system, and movement can make something feel almost alive, at least in the way our imaginations respond. But if sunlight is a slow blanket, not a spotlight, then the sun itself can be thought of as a steady hearth in the sky, not something glaring, just something that holds warmth and shares it. And because the sun feels so steady, it can be soothing to zoom out for a moment and remember just how patient it is. The sun has been shining for a very long time, long before any of us existed, long before cities and languages and stories, and it will keep shining for a long time to come. Not forever, but for so long that our ordinary sense of time begins to soften at the edges. There's something comforting in that scale. Not because it makes our lives small, but because it lets urgency loosen. The universe is not in a hurry. The sun is not in a hurry. You tonight do not have to be in a hurry. So we've touched the familiar, warmth on skin, light through curtains, photons as gentle messengers, the daily rhythm we live inside. And next, very slowly, we'll begin to explore what the sun actually is, and why it behaves in ways that can tease our minds into using living language. But for now, before we go deeper, let's pause in the quiet again. Feel your breath, in and out like waves, gentle, repeating, reliable. If you're still awake, you can let the idea settle that the sun at its simplest, is an engine of transformation, a place where energy is made available, a steady source sending warmth across space, and you don't have to keep track of every detail that comes next. You can listen the way you might listen to rain, noticing some drops and letting others fade into the background. In a moment, we'll start with a simple comparison, one that feels almost childlike in its clarity. A campfire burns because it consumes fuel and oxygen, and it flickers and crackles. It's beautiful and alive-looking, but it's not alive. So what about the sun? It glows. It seems to burn. It changes. It has cycles and it gives. What happens if we look closely at what that glow really is? For now, just rest in the thought that curiosity can be soft. A question can be warm, and your body can keep drifting downward as if sleep is a gentle gravity of its own, holding you safely, drawing you into deeper quiet. If you're still awake, you don't have to do anything special. Just keep resting exactly where you are. Let your face stay soft. Let your shoulders stay heavy. Let your breath keep arriving and leaving in its own quiet way, like a tide that doesn't need you to supervise it. A moment ago, we ended with a simple comparison. A campfire glows because it is consuming fuel and oxygen. It flickers, it dances, it looks lively, but it isn't alive. And the sun from far away can look like an enormous fire. It glows, it shines, it warms. It even has a surface that seems to shimmer if you look closely in pictures. So what is that glow really? One of the gentlest surprises of astronomy is that a star is not a campfire scaled up. A campfire is chemistry. Wood combines with oxygen. It releases energy as heat and light, and it leaves ash behind. It depends on the surrounding air, and it burns until the fuel is gone. But the sun is different. The sun is so hot that ordinary chemistry, the kind that makes flames, isn't the main story. Instead, the sun is made mostly of gas, so hot that atoms don't stay neatly intact the way they do in the air you breathe. You can picture an atom as a tiny system, with a dense center and lighter particles around it. In everyday life, atoms mostly keep their pieces together, but at the temperatures inside a star, those pieces don't always stay paired up. Electrons can be separated from their atoms. What you get is a special state of matter called plasma. Plasma can sound technical, but you don't need it to feel technical. You can think of plasma as an ocean of charged particles. Instead of neutral atoms drifting quietly, you have a vast, flowing sea where the ingredients carry electric charge. And because they are charged, they respond to electric and magnetic forces in a way that ordinary gas does not. If it helps, you can imagine it like this. In a calm ocean, water molecules slide past one another. In the sun's ocean, the currents are not only pushed by heat and motion, but also guided by invisible lines of influence, like currents that can be subtly steered by fields you can't see. Flowing, shimmering, always moving, but not in a frantic way, in a slow, immense way. And then there's the quiet sculptor at the center of it all, gravity. Gravity is so familiar that it can feel almost boring, but it's one of the most patient forces in the universe. It never gets tired. It never forgets what to do. It simply draws things together. In the beginning, long before the sun was shining, there was a region of space with a little more gas and dust than the surrounding areas. Not a sharp boundary, not a neat ball, just a thicker patch in a vast cloud. Over time, gravity did what it always does. It pulled. Little by little, that region gathered more material. As it gathered, it became denser. As it became denser, it warmed. Because when you compress gas, you increase the jiggling motion of its particles, and that jiggling is heat. So you can think of the young sun as something like a slow gathering, a gentle piling of warmth at the center of a cloud, a quiet concentrating, and as gravity kept squeezing, the core became hot enough for something extraordinary to begin. Not chemistry, something deeper. Fusion. Fusion is the process that powers the sun. It happens when light elements, like hydrogen, join together to form heavier elements, like helium. And when they join, some of their mass is converted into energy, released outward. It's a strange fact, but a comforting one, that the sun's light is not just a surface glow. It is the outward expression of a deep, continuous transformation happening in its core. You don't have to picture fusion as violent. It's easy to imagine it as dramatic because it's powerful, but in the sun, it's also steady. It's patient. It proceeds in tiny steps, across unimaginable numbers of tiny interactions. If you like gentle metaphors, you can imagine hydrogen as small threads being tied into slightly thicker strands. Each tying releases a little warmth, a little light beginning its long journey outward. Not a sudden blaze, more like a countless number of tiny matches being struck very, very slowly, so slowly that the overall glow becomes smooth and constant. What keeps it so calm? Balance. The sun is a kind of ongoing truce between two tendencies. Gravity pulls inward, trying to compress the sun further. Heat and pressure push outward because hot material resists being squeezed. And the sun sits between these two, held in a steady embrace. This balance is sometimes called hydrostatic equilibrium, a big phrase for a very gentle idea. Inward pull, outward push, neither one winning completely. The result is stability, and stability is one of the reasons the sun feels almost alive. It maintains itself, it persists, it waits, it hums along for billions of years, not because it is choosing to, but because physics has found a steady rhythm. If your mind is wandering, that's okay. You can simply hold on to the feeling of the idea. Gravity holds, heat pushes back, and the sun rests in the middle, steady enough to keep shining day after day, year after year, century after century. Now, if we bring that back to our earlier clues about life, you might notice something interesting. Living things take in energy and translate it. The sun does not eat, but it does transform. It doesn't swallow food, but it turns hydrogen into helium, and in doing so it releases energy that becomes light and warmth. Is that metabolism? In the strict biological sense, no. Metabolism in living things is the chemistry of cells, guided by the membranes and genetic instructions, building and breaking molecules in ways that maintain an organism. The sun doesn't have cells, it doesn't have DNA. It doesn't have an inside that is protected by a boundary in the way a living membrane protects a cell. But your mind is not wrong to hear an echo, a resemblance, a poetic similarity. The sun transforms energy. It translates matter into light. And if you're sleepy, you can let that thought be gentle rather than exact. Like holding a smooth stone in your palm, noticing its warmth. Now, once energy is created in the sun's core, how does it reach us? How does something born deep inside make its way out into space and then across the dark, arriving on your skin in the form of a morning glow? To answer that, we can wrap the sun in layers, the way you might wrap yourself in blankets at night. Each layer has its own character, its own texture, its own way of moving. At the very center is the core, the region where fusion happens. You don't need numbers tonight, just the sense that it is the deepest place, the densest place, the warmest place. A hidden hearth. Surrounding the core is a region where energy moves outwards, mainly by radiation. Not in the sense of something scary, but in the sense of light. Photons, those tiny parcels of energy. In the radiative zone, energy is carried outward by light being absorbed and re-emitted, again and again. It's not like a straight beam travelling cleanly from the centre to the surface. It's more like a long wandering. If you imagine a person trying to cross a crowded room, but each step is interrupted by gentle bumps and detours, that's closer to the feeling. A photon starts in one direction, gets absorbed by a particle, and then another photon is emitted in a slightly different direction. And then it happens again and again and again. So the light doesn't rush. It meanders, it drifts like a slow traveller in woe, taking a path that is not a line, but a patient random walk. The energy is always moving outward overall, but not with any urgency. You can let your breathing match that idea. Slow progress, no hurry. Always moving, but softly. Eventually, farther out, the sun's interior becomes a place where energy is carried mainly by convection. Convection is the gentle rising and falling of warmer and cooler material. In a pot of water on a stove, convection can look like bubbling. But inside the sun, it's not a pot, it's a vast rolling movement of plasma. If you want a softer image, imagine a lava lamp. Warm blobs rising, cooler blobs sinking, everything cycling in a calm loop. Or imagine thick cream stirred very slowly, making soft folds. In the sun's convective zone, hot plasma rises toward the surface because it's less dense. As it rises, it cools a bit, gives away energy, and then sinks back down to warm again. Over and over, an endless slow churning. This is one of the sun's most lifelike qualities. In appearance, it moves, it circulates, it has patterns, it's not a still object, it's a system. And then we reach the part we see, the sun's visible surface, which is called the photosphere. The photosphere is not a hard shell. It's more like the place where the sun becomes transparent enough that light can finally escape into space. It's the layer where photons stop bumping into particles so constantly and can begin their long, straight journey toward places like Earth. When you see a picture of the sun and you're seeing the photosphere, and if you look closely, it has a texture like tiny grains. Those are signs of convection beneath, like the surface patterns you see in simmering soup, but far more immense and patient. And within that textured surface, you sometimes see darker patches, sunspots. Sunspots are regions that are cooler than the surrounding photosphere. Cooler is relative, of course. They're still very hot, but compared to the rest, dioptrias, they look darker. You can think of sunspots as freckles on a glowing body always, not wounds, not damage. Just features made by the sun's own internal patterns. Sunspots are linked to magnetism and will drift into magnetism soon, very gently. For now, you only need to know that magnetic fields can shape the movement of plasma, guiding it, holding it, making certain regions behave differently. In sunspots, the magnetic field is stronger and it can inhibit some of the convection, changing how heat moves upward, resulting in a slightly cooler area. The sun then is not only warm and bright, it's patterned, it's textured, it has quiet variety. Above the photosphere is a thin layer called the chromosphere, and above that the corona, the sun's outer atmosphere. The corona is a beautiful word like a crown, and it can be imagined like a faint veil, a delicate halo extending outward. It's there even when the photosphere is too bright to let us see it, but during a solar eclipse when the moon blocks the bright surface, the corona can become visible as a soft pale glow around the dark disk. Even if you've never seen it, you can picture it gently, like frosted light around a lantern, and from the corona, the sun continuously releases a stream of particles. This is the solar wind. You don't need to picture it as a blast. You can picture it as a breeze, a steady outward flow, like the sun is always sending a faint breath into the solar system. It's not a breath in the biological sense, of course. But if you imagine the solar system as an ocean, then the solar wind is a subtle current flowing outward from its center. And Earth, with its own magnetic field, sits in that current like a smooth stone in a stream, shaping the flow around it, protected by an invisible shield that we'll talk about later. For now, you can simply hold the image of the sun as layered warmth, surrounded by a delicate atmosphere, sending out a constant gentle wind. If you place all of this together, the sun begins to look like something with an inside and an outside, with circulation and texture and rhythm, but again, we can be tenderly clear. These layers are not organs, these flows are not blood, these patterns are not thoughts, they are physics, and still it makes sense that a human mind, especially a tired human mind trying to make sense of vast things, might reach for familiar language. Because we understand life through motion and change and cycles, we understand aliveness through the ways something maintains itself, responds and persists. And the sun does persist. It persists through a balance so stable that it can feel almost protective, like a constant, quiet helper in the background of life on Earth. Now, if you're still awake, you can let your attention drift toward the next gentle question. If the sun is an ocean of charged particles, and charged particles respond to magnetic fields, then what kind of magnetic patterns does the sun have? How do those invisible lines of magnetism shape sunspots, texture and cycles? And why does the sun sometimes seem to have moods, in the way its surface patterns grow and fade over years? You don't have to hold the questions tightly, you can simply let them hover, like faint stars above the observatory dome. As you lie there, safe and heavy in your bed, you might imagine that quiet observatory again. Cool air, soft blanket, the night sky holding steady. And somewhere beyond the horizon the sun continues its slow internal story. Gravity holding, fusion warming, energy drifting outward, light preparing to travel. No hurry, no demand, just a steady, patient glow, waiting to be morning again. If you're still awake, you can stay just as you are. No need to adjust anything unless your body asks for a small shift. A quieter angle of your head, a deeper sinking of your shoulders into the mattress. Let comfort make the decisions for you, and let your breathing keep its soft, repeating rhythm like a shore that never forgets how to meet the sea. A moment ago we were holding the image of the sun as layered warmth, with energy drifting outward and light preparing to travel. And now we can follow one of the sun's most subtle, most beautiful threads. Magnetism. It's a word that can sound sharp, but it doesn't have to. Tonight, magnetism can be as gentle as the way a compass needle quietly chooses north, without fuss, without a sound. It can be as familiar as a small magnet on a refrigerator door, holding a note in place. It can be as calm as invisible lines arranging themselves in space like faint, elegant ribbons. If you've ever played with magnets, you might remember how they behave. Two magnets can pull toward each other, or they can push away. You can feel the force in your fingers like a soft insistence, and yet you can't see the force itself. You only see what it does. That is a good way to think about magnetic fields. Magnetic field is not a thing you can hold. It's more like a pattern in space, a region, where forces can act on moving charges. It's a kind of invisible geometry, shaping motion, guiding it, whispering directions. and the Sun, being an ocean of charged particles, is a place where magnetic fields matter a great deal. Inside the Sun, plasma moves. It rises and falls in convection. It flows, it circulates. And because the plasma is made of charged particles, its motion can generate magnetic fields. The magnetic fields in turn influence the motion of the plasma. It becomes a slow, ongoing conversation. Motion makes magnetism. Magnetism shapes motion. A loop, a cycle, not a conscious one, not a chosen one, but a natural one. In science, the process that generates a star's magnetic field is often called a dynamo. If that word feels mechanical, you can let it soften. You can imagine it as the Sun stirring itself gently like a vast, slow soup. And in the stirring, invisible threads form, twist, and gather. One of the reasons magnetism in the Sun becomes so complex is that the Sun doesn't rotate like a solid ball. A solid billiard ball spins as one unit. Every part shares the same rotation rate. But the Sun is fluid, it's plasma, and different parts can rotate at different speeds. Near the Sun's equator, the surface rotates a bit faster than near the poles. This is called differential rotation. Again, you don't need the term, you just need the feeling of it. Imagine a soft globe made of thick honey. If you turn it, the honey near the middle might flow in one way, while the honey nearer the top and bottom lags behind, pulling and stretching the flow. That stretching matters. Because magnetic field lines in a moving plasma can be tugged, twisted, and wound up like threads in a whirlpool. Over time, the Sun's motion can take gentle magnetic patterns and wind them into more complicated shapes. And when those shapes become tangled or concentrated, they can show up at the surface as features we can observe. Sunspots. You can return to the image of freckles on a glowing face. Areas where the magnetic field is stronger, where the normal rising of hot plasma is partly suppressed, making that region a little cooler and therefore darker. They appear, they linger, they fade. They are not signs of the Sun getting sick. They are simply the Sun being the Sun, expressing its inner patterns on its surface. If you look over months, you might see sunspots come and go, but if you look over years, you notice another layer of rhythm. The number of sunspots rises and falls in a cycle that averages around 11 years. It's not an exact metronome, but it is a recognizable pulse. You can think of it like a slow tide. Some years the sea is higher. Some years it's lower. The shore is still the shore. The ocean is still the ocean. It's simply moving through a gentle repeating pattern. Sometimes people describe the solar cycle as heartbeat-like, and it can be a comforting metaphor, as long as we remember it's only a metaphor. The Sun does not have a heart. It does not have blood, but it does have rhythm. During the solar cycle, magnetic patterns in the Sun change. Sunspots become more common and then less common. The Sun's magnetic field gradually shifts, and in fact, over the full cycle, the Sun's overall magnetic polarity flips, like a compass that slowly turns around to point the other way. That flip is not dramatic in a way you need to worry about. It's part of the Sun's long, patient magnetism story shaped by its rotating, convecting plasma. Another example of a system finding its way through patterns, not through intention but through physics. So if your mind has ever felt comforted by routines, by cycles, by gentle repetition, you might feel a small kinship with that aspect of the Sun, not because the Sun is like you, but because the universe often moves in rhythms, breath, day and night, seasons, tides, and, on its own scale, the Sun's magnetic cycle. Now, magnetism doesn't only make calm cycles, it can also store energy. When magnetic field lines in the Sun's atmosphere become twisted and stressed by motion below, they can hold energy in their structure. And sometimes, the Sun releases that energy. This is where we hear about solar flares and coronal mass ejections. Those phrases can sound intense, so let's hold them gently and describe them in a way that feels safe. A solar flare is a sudden brightening, a release of energy in the Sun's atmosphere. A coronal mass ejection is a release of a large cloud of plasma and magnetic field into space. But you don't need to picture explosions. You can picture a stretched rubber band that finally relaxes, or a tightly wound ribbon that loosens and settles back into a smoother shape. It's the Sun releasing tension in its magnetic patterns, returning toward a calmer arrangement. And even when these events send energy and particles outward, Earth is not helpless. Earth is wrapped in its own protective systems. Our planet has a magnetic field too, generated deep inside by moving molten metal. That field extends outward into space, creating a region called the magnetosphere, which you can imagine as an invisible bubble around Earth. A soft shield that guides many charged particles around rather than letting them pour directly down onto us. And we also have an atmosphere, a blanket of gas that protects and cushions life, filtering and absorbing in helpful ways. Between the magnetosphere and the atmosphere, Earth is remarkably well suited for living under a lively star. Sometimes, when particles from the Sun do interact with Earth's magnetic field, they create something quietly beautiful. Auroras. If you've ever seen pictures of auroras, you've seen curtains of green and pink light draped across the night sky, moving softly like fabric in slow water. They are a reminder that even invisible forces can make gentle art. So if the idea of solar activity ever feels alarming, you can return to that calmer truth. The Sun's magnetism is part of a dance. Earth has its own dance, and life has grown up inside the space where these dances meet, protected, adapted, and steady. You can let that reassurance settle into your breathing. Inhale, calm, exhale, softer. And now, you might notice how easily the Sun, with its cycles and patterns, invites us to describe it in human terms. We say it has activity. We say it has quiet phases and active phases. We say it has moods, even though we know it doesn't feel anything. When something changes in patterned ways, we instinctively treat it like a character, like a being with its own style. And that brings us back to a gentle question, one that can float without needing to be resolved immediately. When something has cycles and variations, when it maintains itself through balance, when it sends energy outward in a steady stream, do we start to describe it like a living thing, simply because that's the language our minds know best? Maybe. And there's something tender about that. It's not ignorance, it's closeness. It's the brain trying to relate to something enormous by using the tools it has. But in science, we can appreciate the poetry and still keep our footing. We can say the Sun is not alive in the biological sense, and also say the Sun has a life story, in the sense that it changes over time. It has a beginning, a long stable middle, and a far distant ending. That's the next gentle thread we can follow. Not life like a creature, but lifetime like a star. So let's step into that story the way you might step into a quiet forest where the trees are old, the air is still, and time feels slower. Imagine for a moment a cloud, not an earth cloud, not formed from water vapor, but cloud in space, made mostly of hydrogen gas, with a sprinkling of other elements and tiny grains of dust. These clouds can be enormous, stretched out across light years, and yet so thin that if you were inside one you might barely notice it. Space is patient like that. Huge things can be very gentle. Within such a cloud, some regions are slightly denser than others. Maybe a ripple moved through. Maybe a nearby star's activity nudged the gas. There are many ways a cloud can be encouraged to gather into knots. But the key idea is simple. Where there is a little more matter, gravity is a little stronger. And over time, the stronger gravity pulls in more matter, making it denser still, which strengthens gravity further. A slow gathering begins, a quiet concentrating. As the gas falls inward, it warms. Again, not because it's being set on fire, but because compression increases motion, and motion is heat. This is the beginning of a star, a protostar, a star in the making. You can imagine it like a softly glowing ember forming inside a vast dark cushion, a warmer centre surrounded by cooler gas, everything spiralling inward slowly like a sleepy whirlpool. Not a sharp snap into existence, more like a gradual becoming. For a while, a protostar is warm mainly because it is contracting, because gravity is feeding it heat by bringing material inward. But eventually, if it gathers enough mass, the core becomes hot and dense enough for fusion to begin. And when fusion begins, the star truly turns on, not like a light bulb flipping, but like a dawn. At first it's small, a whisper of fusion, then it grows steady. It enters a long phase of stable shining. This long stable phase is called the main sequence. Again, you don't need the term, you just need the feeling of it. The main sequence is like a long, calm afternoon in the life of a star. The star is not young and chaotic anymore. It has settled into balance, so gravity pulls inward, pressure pushes outward, fusion supplies energy. The star shines at a fairly stable rate for a very long time, and this is where the Sun is now. The Sun is a main sequence star. It has been shining for billions of years, and it has billions more years of stable shining ahead. It can be soothing to hold that thought as you lie in bed with your eyes closed. The Sun is steady on timescales far beyond daily worries. It is not flickering on the edge of going out. Not at all. It is deep in its long, stable middle. If your thoughts have been anxious, if you felt the world as fragile, you can let this particular fact be a small anchor. The Sun has time, a great deal of time. Now, when we speak of a star's birth and middle age, we are definitely using metaphor. It can be a helpful metaphor because it organizes time into a story. But it's important to keep the gentle distinction clear. A star's life cycle is not a biological life cycle. Stars do not have cells, they do not have DNA, they do not reproduce in the way living organisms do. They do not pass genetic instructions to star children. Stars can form in groups in stellar nurseries, and multiple stars can arise from the same cloud. But that is not reproduction. It's more like multiple raindrops condensing from the same humid air. A shared origin, not a parent and child. So if you return to our gentle clues of life, you can feel where the Sun fits and where it doesn't. The Sun transforms energy, but it doesn't metabolize through cellular chemistry. The Sun maintains balance, but not through biological regulation. It's physics. The Sun changes and has cycles, but it doesn't adapt through evolution the way populations of organisms do. And yet the Sun is still a dynamic system with a long narrative arc. It begins, it remains, it will eventually change form. And we can talk about that future carefully and kindly without making it feel scary. Far in the future, the Sun will gradually alter as it uses up hydrogen in its core. The details are complex, but the feeling is simple. The Sun's internal balance will shift because the fuel in the core changes. As the core's hydrogen becomes depleted, fusion in the core will slow. The core will contract under gravity and heat up. and that heating will affect layers around it. Over long time, the sun will expand, becoming a red giant. If the phrase giant feels too big, you can imagine it like a flower opening. The sun's outer layers will swell outward, becoming larger and cooler at the surface, glowing with the reddish light. It's a transformation, not a sudden event. It unfolds slowly as stars do. Eventually the sun will shed its outer layers, letting them drift away into space, forming a glowing shell of gas called a planetary nebula. That name is a historical oddity, not a sign it has anything to do with planets. It's simply a beautiful, expanding cloud, lit by the remaining hot core. And what remains at the center will be a white dwarf, a dense, hot remnant slowly cooling over an extremely long time. This might sound like an ending, but it can also be framed as a kind of quiet generosity. The sun's outer material will return to the galaxy, enriching space with elements that can one day become part of new clouds, new stars, new planets. In the universe, endings are often recycling, not in a tidy human way, but in a vast, patient way. If that future feels too far away to hold, you can let it drift off immediately. It is unimaginably distant, so distant that it does not belong to your bedtime worries. You do not need to carry it tonight. Instead, you can keep the softer truth. Right now, the sun is steady. Right now, it warms your world from far away. Right now, it is held in balance, shining calmly while you rest. And here, very gently, we can make the central clarification again, in a way that doesn't break the sleepy mood. The sun has a lifetime, but it is not alive. It has a history, but not a biology. It has patterns that resemble moods, but not feelings. And if you notice yourself wanting to personify it anyway, to think of it as a quiet guardian or a steady traveller, that's okay. That's a human way of relating. You can enjoy the metaphor without mistaking it for literal truth. Sometimes the mind needs closeness to relax, and the sun, for all its distance, is one of the closest cosmic things we have. It touches everything we do. It lifts the day, it warms the air, it feeds the green world, it sets the pace, so it makes sense that we wonder. And now, as you lie there, you might ask yourself, softly, without pressure, what is it about a system that persists, that cycles, that balances itself, that makes us feel it is almost alive? Is it the motion? Is it the rhythm? Is it the way it gives? You don't need to answer. You can simply let the questions drift, like those slow clouds again, crossing the quiet interior sky of your mind. Take another gentle breath in and out. If you're feeling sleepy, you can let that sleepiness spread, like warm light moving slowly across a room at sunrise. Not a bright beam, just a gradual glow. And if you're still awake, that's fine too. We'll keep going in the same calm way, letting science and imagery take turns, like footsteps on a soft path. In our next stretch, we'll begin connecting this star story back to your everyday life in an even more intimate way. Because the sun isn't just a bright object in the sky. In a quiet sense, it is threaded through your food, your warmth, your winds, your oceans, your days. And when you notice those threads, you can feel both clarity and comfort at the same time. For now, you can rest in the thought that the universe is full of steady processes. Gravity, light, cycles, balance, and you are allowed to lean into that steadiness. You're safe, you don't have to remember everything, and you can let yourself drift slowly towards sleep while the sun continues its patient shining on the other side of the world. If you're still awake, that's perfectly okay. You can let your attention come and go like a slow tide. You might catch a sentence clearly, then drift for a while, then return again. There is no need to hold on tightly. Just rest and let the ideas pass through like warm air through a room. A moment ago we were talking about the sun's long, slow story, and the gentle truth that a star can have a lifetime without being alive in the biological sense. Now we can bring the sun closer again, not closer in distance, but closer in feeling, because even as the sun sits far away, it touches your everyday life in quiet, constant ways. It's in small, ordinary scenes, and also in the deep background processes that make Earth feel like home. So let's take that thread very slowly. Imagine a leaf in daylight. It doesn't have to be a specific leaf. Just the idea of one, a soft surface catching sunlight, a thin living sheet green with pigments that absorb certain wavelengths and reflect others, giving us that familiar colour. When sunlight lands on the leaf, the plant doesn't just get brighter, it receives energy. And through a careful chain of chemistry, the plant uses that energy to build sugars, to store the sun's light in molecular form. This is photosynthesis. A big word, but the feeling of it can be gentle. Light arriving, life receiving, energy being folded into matter. And because plants are at the base of most food webs on land and in the sea, a quiet truth follows. Much of the energy that moves through ecosystems begins as sunlight. The energy in your own body, even as you lie in bed, can be traced back step by step to the sun, perhaps through wheat in bread or rice in a bowl or vegetables or fruit, or through the plants that fed the animals that fed you. The chain can be long, but the origin is often the same. In that sense, the sun is not alive, but it is life-giving. It doesn't digest food, but it makes the food chain possible. It doesn't breathe, but it powers the oxygen-making work of plants and algae. It doesn't have a heartbeat, but it sets the tempo of the day that living bodies adapt to. That can be a comforting thing to notice, that your life is threaded into a wider pattern, a quiet network of energy moving and changing form. If you want to feel it in a very personal way, you might imagine the warmth that keeps you comfortable at night. Even if your room is cool, your body creates warmth. That warmth is energy, and that energy came from food. And that food, in deep time and many steps, came from sunlight. It's like a secret river, flowing from the sun into the green world, into meals, into living motion, into breath, into the simple act of being warm under blankets. And the sun's influence stretches beyond food. It shapes weather. Again, we can hold that gently, without storms or anything sharp. Just the calm physics of warmth and movement. Sunlight warms Earth's surface, but it doesn't warm everything equally. Some places heat more quickly, some absorb more light. Oceans store heat differently than land. Ice reflects light. Forests hold moisture. Because the heating is uneven, air moves. Warm air rises, cooler air sinks, and winds form, the way breath forms when pressure shifts. So you can think of wind as sunlight translated into motion. Not all at once, not dramatically, but as a steady, ongoing system. Kind of earth breathing, slow and wide, and the oceans too are shaped by the sun. Sunlight warms the surface water, and that warmth becomes part of currents and patterns, moving heat around the planet in sweeping loops. Even the water cycle, the gentle cycle of evaporation and condensation, is powered by sunlight. Water lifts into the air as vapor. It gathers into clouds. It returns as rain. It flows back to the sea. All of it, in one way or another, nudged and powered by the sun's steady energy. If you're sleepy, you don't have to keep track of each connection. You can just hold the feeling that the sun is like a quiet engine beneath the surface of ordinary life, turning light into movement, turning warmth into cycles. And if you ever feel alone at night, it can be soothing to remember that these cycles are happening continuously, everywhere, whether you're watching them or not. The planet is gently in motion, the air, the water, the living world, and you too are part of it, even as you rest. Now, there's another connection to everyday life that's a little deeper in time. Fossil fuels. We'll handle this slowly and calmly because it can bring up big thoughts. But it can also be said in a gentle, almost poetic way. Coal, oil and natural gas are, in a sense, ancient sunlight. Long ago, plants and microscopic organisms captured sunlight and stored it in chemical bonds. Over vast stretches of time, some of that living material was buried and transformed, compressed under layers of sediment, changing into concentrated forms of carbon-rich fuel. So when energy is released from those fuels, it is partly energy that began as sunlight stored and carried forward through time. You don't need to feel heavy about that tonight. You can simply let it be a quiet fact about how energy can be stored in the world, how the sun's influence can be folded into matter and preserved across ages. And if you like, you can return to the softer everyday connection again. The warmth of sunlight on a wall, the way morning light shifts along the floor, the gentle reliability of day arriving again and again. Now, from those everyday threads, we can widen our view slightly and connect the sun's balance to a broader idea in nature. Homeostasis. Earlier we talked about homeostasis as a living thing staying within comfortable ranges, your body regulating temperature, adjusting chemistry, maintaining a stable inner world. The sun doesn't do homeostasis the way a body does. It doesn't have sensors and nerves and hormones. It's not regulating with intention, and yet it does maintain a kind of stability. Gravity pulls inward, pressure pushes outward. Fusion supplies energy to keep internal pressure strong enough to resist collapse. This balance can last for a very long time, and when it shifts slowly over enormous timescales. So there's an echo here. In a living organism, homeostasis is active biological regulation. In a star, stability is physical equilibrium. Different mechanisms, similar feeling. Both are about steadiness in a changing universe. And that's a quiet wow, if you let it be. The universe seems to favour patterns that hold. It's as if across scales, from the small warmth of your body to the vast inner warmth of a star, stability is something nature finds again and again. Not perfect stillness, but steady motion within bounds, like your breath. It's always changing in and out, but it stays within a rhythm that keeps you safe. You might take a moment now to notice your breath again. Inhale gently, exhale slowly, nothing to force, just the quiet repetition that life knows how to do. And now we can step into another gentle layer of the question. Why do humans ask if the sun is alive? It's such an interesting thing when you think about it. We could ask it about many things. Is the ocean alive? Is a storm alive? Is a river alive? Is a forest alive as a whole, not just its individual trees? Our minds like to animate the world, not because we're foolish, but because we're social creatures. We understand Shintosporo and beings and characters. We're tuned to notice patterns, intentions, moods, even where there are none. If a house creaks at night, part of the mind wonders if something is there. If the wind knocks a branch against a window, the mind might momentarily make a story. It's a natural tendency. The brain is skilled at turning sensations into meaning. And when we look at the sun, we see something that behaves in complex ways. It has cycles, it has variability, it has surface patterns that come and go. It sends out a continuous stream of particles. It influences our lives profoundly. So the mind reaches for closeness and says, in a half-poetic way, could it be alive? In science, we can acknowledge that instinct without scolding it. We can say it makes sense to wonder. Wonder is how humans connect to the cosmos. Wonder is how we remember we're part of something larger without needing it to be frightening or overwhelming. And we can also gently refine the question. Sometimes when we say alive, we might mean complex, or we might mean self-sustaining for a long time, or we might mean capable of changing in patterned ways, or we might simply mean important to life. The word alive carries a lot of feelings, so it can help to separate the feelings from the definition. In a strict biological sense, life involves cells, metabolism guided by biological structures, reproduction, and evolution through genetic inheritance. The sun doesn't have those. The sun is not alive like a tree is alive, not alive like a human is alive, not alive like a bacterium is alive, but the sun is dynamic. It is active. It is a coherent system. It has a long narrative arc. It influences, and in a deep way enables, life on Earth. So if you want a gentle phrase to hold tonight, you might say this. By biological definitions, the sun is not alive, and by poetic truth, the sun is life-giving. It is not a living creature, but it is a steady source from which life draws day after day. You can hold both truths at the same time like two smooth stones in your hand. One stone is clarity, one stone is wonder. Neither one needs to crush the other. If you're feeling sleepy now, you can let that be the end of the thinking part. You don't need to push further. But we'll continue softly into the next phase, where we let information become simpler, more meditative, more repeating. Before we drift into that, let's take one more quiet moment to settle. Notice the weight of your body in the bed holding you up, so you don't have to hold yourself up. Notice your hands, wherever they are, warm and still. Notice your breath, like quiet waves again. And now, as we begin to drift, we'll let the language become slower. We'll revisit a few ideas, not to drill them in, but to let them rock you gently the way repetition can soothe a tired mind. The sun is not alive like a tree, but it is full of motion. It is full of giving. Gravity holds it. Fusion warms it. Light travels from it. Earth receives. And somewhere in the ordinary world, a leaf opens to the day and drinks sunlight into sweetness. Somewhere the ocean surface is warmed and the air shifts softly. Somewhere a morning arrives and the light moves along a wall. No hurry, just cycles, just steady patterns. In a way, it can be comforting to think of the sun as a hearth that never asks anything from you. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't require gratitude. It simply glows, because that is what a star does when it is held in balance. And you, tonight, can simply rest, because that is what a body does when it is safe enough to let go. We'll take a gentle visualization outward, drifting from Earth toward the sun in a calm, protected imagination, as if you are floating on a cushion of darkness, approaching a warm lantern behind frosted glass. But for now, you can let your mind loosen a little more. If you're still awake, you can keep listening. If you're drifting, you can drift. Nothing to remember perfectly, nothing to solve. Just a quiet night, a steady breath, and a star beyond the horizon, doing what it has always done, shining patiently while you ease towards sleep. If you're still awake, you're doing just fine. You don't need to try to sleep harder, or chase sleep down like it's something you can catch. Sleep is more like a slow animal that comes closer when the room is quiet, when your body is still, when your breathing is easy. So you can simply keep resting. Let your thoughts be soft around the edges. And if you've been drifting in and out, that's perfect too. You can rejoin this gentle stream wherever you find yourself. We've been holding a warm question tonight, and we've let it unfold without pressure. We've looked at the sun with both clear science and gentle wonder, and now we'll let the pace slow even more. We'll take what we already know and let it become simpler, more repetitive, more meditative, the way waves repeat themselves without needing to be new each time. The purpose now is not to learn more, it's to feel calm enough to let go. So begin by noticing your breath again. Inhale quietly, exhale slowly. You can imagine that each exhale is a small release, a loosening, a softening of whatever is still clenched, even if you can't name what it is. And in this softer space we can repeat a few gentle truths, the kind you can hold like smooth stones. The sun is not alive like a tree. The sun is not alive like an animal. The sun is not alive like you. And still it is full of motion. It is full of change. It is full of giving. Gravity holds it. Fusion warms it. Light travels from it. Earth receives. You don't need to remember the words. You can let them flow over you like warm water. Gravity holds. Fusion warms. Light travels. Earth receives, and if your mind is wandering, let it wander. You can come back to the rhythm whenever you want. Gravity holds, fusion warms, light travels, Earth receives. Now imagine something very simple. Imagine you are in your bed, safe and still, and outside your room the night exists in its quiet way. The world isn't asking anything from you right now. The streets, if there are streets nearby, are quieter. The sky is darker. The day has released its grip. And somewhere beyond your walls, beyond your neighborhood, beyond your city, beyond whatever horizon you can picture, the earth is turning steadily. It's turning the way it always turns, with a patience so complete it doesn't feel like motion at all. And as earth turns, it carries the night side and the day side around and around, like a slow carousel. This means the sun isn't gone. It's simply not on this side of the turning earth, at least not for this moment. The sun is still there, still steady, still shining. That can be a comforting thought to rest inside like a warm pocket. Now, if you'd like, we can begin a gentle visualization. It is said, it is slow. It is non-scary. It's more like floating in imagination than travelling in reality, and you can opt out at any moment. You can let it become vague. You can let it dissolve. You can even fall asleep halfway through, and that would be exactly the point. So imagine you are lying on your bed, and your body feels heavy in the best way. The mattress holds you. The blanket rests on you. Your breath moves you just a little like a small tide. Now imagine you're looking at Earth from above, not in a sharp high-definition way, but in a soft, dreamy way. Earth below you is quiet and round, a gentle presence in darkness. You can picture the night side as deep blue-black, scattered with the few warm dots, the faint glow of cities. Not too bright, just a soft suggestion of human life, like fireflies. And you can picture the dayside as a pale curve, like a dimly lit marble. Clouds drift slowly across it, white and soft. Oceans hold light and shadow. The whole planet looks calm from this distance. You're not really outside your bed, of course. You're safe where you are. This is only an image, a soothing story for the mind. And in this story you are wrapped in comfort, as if the darkness itself is a blanket. Now, let yourself drift outward a little more, not fast, not far, just enough to feel the spaciousness. You might imagine the moon nearby not as a looming object, but as a quiet companion, pale and steady, a smooth stone in the sky. Everything feels slow here. Everything feels unhurried. The stars are distant and calm, like tiny, patient lights that have been shining long before you were born, and will keep shining long after any one night. And as you float in this imagined quiet, you can begin to face in the direction of the sun. You don't need to picture it as blinding. You can picture it as a warm lantern behind frosted glass, a glow that suggests warmth without hurting your eyes, a presence rather than a glare. Before you approach that warmth, you might pause and notice something. Between the sun and earth, there is space. And space in this context is not empty like a neglected room. It's full of subtle things, thin, gas, dust, fields, gentle currents of particles. Earlier we spoke of the solar wind, the sun's continuous outward flow of charged particles. In this visualization, you can imagine it as a soft breeze moving through a vast house. Not a storm, not a blast, just a steady drift. And around Earth, you can imagine Earth's magnetic field like a cocoon, shaping that breeze, guiding it, a calm, invisible boundary, a protective curve. You don't need to picture lines or diagrams, just the feeling of being held, of being protected, of being in a place where life can rest and grow. Now, drift outward a little more, keeping everything slow and soft. As you move closer to that warm lantern glow of the sun, you can let a few simple ideas return like lullaby verses. The sun glows because deep inside hydrogen becomes helium. The sun shines because gravity holds it together. The sun is steady because inward pull and outward push stay balanced. Gravity holds, fusion warms, light travels, Earth receives. You might notice how repetitive that feels. That's on purpose. Repetition is soothing. It tells the nervous system, nothing surprising is coming. You can relax. Gravity holds, fusion warms, light travels, Earth receives. And now, as you gently imagine the sun closer, you can picture it not as a solid ball, but as a sphere of flowing plasma, an ocean of charged particles. If that feels too technical, you can reduce it to a simpler image. A sphere of glowing mist. A warm, luminous ocean. A slow, living-looking thing that is not alive. You can let those words be paradoxical and soft, living-looking, not living, active, not alive, dynamic, not biological. And as you float nearer, you can imagine the sun's layers like blankets. At the center, the hidden hearth. Around it, the slow wandering of energy. Outward, the rolling convection, like a lava lamp in slow motion. And then the photosphere, the gentle surface we see, where light finally leaves to travel through space. Blankets within blankets. Warmth within warmth. What's important here is not the terminology, it's the feeling of layered steadiness, like being tucked in. If your mind wants details, you can offer it one or two, then let them fade. Energy takes a long time to drift from the sun's core to its surface, bumping and wandering. The surface shows texture, like soft grains, signs of movement beneath. Sometimes there are sunspots, cooler freckles shaped by magnetism, and above it all a faint veil and the corona extending outward. But you don't need to keep any of that. You can let it dissolve back into the simple lantern image. A warm lantern behind frosted glass. A steady glow, not demanding, not urgent, just present. Now, as you float, you might want to ask, very softly one last time, the question that started our night. Is the sun alive? And you can answer equally softly. Not alive by biology, no cells, no DNA, no reproduction, no metabolism like yours. And then you can add the gentler companion truth. And yet it gives, it warms, it anchors the day, it threads through food, weather and water. It makes life possible here. Not alive, but life-giving, not a creature, but a source. Not a mind, but a steady heart of physics. Even if we're careful with words, it's natural to feel a kind of gratitude toward that steadiness. A quiet appreciation, nothing dramatic, just a soft recognition that you live in a world that is warmed and lit. Now, let the visualization become even calmer. Imagine you are simply hovering in quiet space, with Earth behind you as a gentle blue memory, and the sun ahead of you as a warm, soft presence. There is no sound here, no rush, no pressure, only the sense of light travelling. And in this imagined space you can let yourself feel how light moves. Light is not hurried, but it is constant. It crosses the gap between the sun and Earth, bringing warmth and energy. And when it reaches Earth, it becomes so many ordinary things. It becomes plant growth, it becomes gentle wind, it becomes ocean shimmer, it becomes the daily rhythm your body knows how to ride. It becomes the light that finds your window in the morning, even if you don't see it. So in this drift phase, we can let the science turn into a slower chant of meaning. Light travels, warmth arrives, life responds. Light travels, warmth arrives, life responds, and your breathing can match that rhythm without effort. Inhale, warmth, exhale softer, inhale calm, exhale release. Now we can bring the image back towards something very cozy. Imagine the sun as a hearth, not a roaring fire, not sparks, not crackling. A hearth that is steady, like embers that never fully fade, like a warmth that simply exists. A hearth that doesn't need you. A hearth that doesn't ask you to be productive or perfect or alert. It simply gives warmth because that is its nature. And you lying here can receive that idea the way you receive a blanket. No effort, just allowing. Now, to keep things soft, we can let the information become simpler and simpler. You do not need to hold big numbers, you do not need to picture the sun size, you do not need to remember layer names. You can let it all become feeling, steady, warm, distant, reliable, steady, warm, distant, reliable. If your mind tries to wake itself up with a new thought, you can notice that and let it float away, like a leaf drifting down a slow stream, and you can return to these gentle words. Gravity holds, fusion warms, light travels, Earth receives, gravity holds, fusion warms, light travels, Earth receives. Now, imagine the light again, not as something bright, but as something soft. Like a warm mist reaching across space, like a quiet message, repeated endlessly. I am here, I shine, you're safe. And if you don't like that personification, you can make it more factual. A star shines, a planet turns, life rests. A star shines, a planet turns, life rests. You can hear how the sentence is slow, how they become more like rocking. A star shines, a planet turns, life rests. Now, let's drift back down from space gently, the way you might drift back into your pillow after a thought. You're here, you're in your room, you're in your bed, your body is supported, your breath is moving, your hands are still, your face is soft. And even if you have worries waiting somewhere in the future, you do not have to open them tonight. Tonight is not for carrying, tonight is all for releasing. If it helps, imagine each worry as something you can place on a shelf, not thrown away and not denied. Just set down for now. You can pick them up later if you need to, but for now the shelf can hold them and you can rest. Now, we'll let the language become even more dreamy and a little more repetitive. Imagine warm light, very far away, travelling through darkness like a gentle thread. Imagine it arriving at Earth, touching the top of the atmosphere, filtering softly through air. Imagine it touching the surface of leaves, waking up green chemistry. Imagine it warming the skin of oceans, lifting water into the air as vapour. Imagine it becoming cloud, then rain, then river, then sea again, all slow, all cyclical, all patient. And now imagine the light touching your world, not as something you must meet, but as something that will arrive without you doing anything at all. Morning will come, even if you sleep through it, even if clouds hide it, even if you don't think about it. Morning will come, the sun will be there, steady and giving, and you can let that be reassuring. Because it means you don't have to hold the world up with your thoughts. The world has its own steadiness. Now just for a moment, return to your breath. Inhale gently as if sipping warm air. Exhale slowly like a quiet sigh. You can let your belly soften. You can let your shoulders drop again by a fraction. You can let your eyes rest heavier. And you can let your mind be less interested in words. The words are only here to guide you toward quiet. And now we can begin the soft goodbye in a way that fades rather than stops. We've explored a simple, comforting truth. The sun is a star of flowing plasma. It is held together by gravity. It glows because deep inside, it is turning hydrogen into helium. It shines because it is balanced between inward pull and outward pressure. It changes in cycles with patterns shaped by magnetism. And by the definition used in biology, it is not alive. No cells, no DNA, no reproduction. And yet it is deeply tied to life on Earth. Its light powers plants. Its warmth shapes weather and water. Its steady rhythm anchors days and seasons. Not alive, but life-giving. Not a creature, but a source. And you don't need to remember any of that perfectly. You only need to rest. If you missed a part, it doesn't matter. If your mind wandered, that's normal. If you fell asleep for a while and came back, that's welcome too. Sleep is the point. Rest is the point. So as we come to the end of this gentle journey, you can allow your body to sink more fully into the mattress. Unclench your jaw. Soften your shoulders, let your hands be loose, let your legs feel heavy, let your breath be quiet. There is nothing to do, nothing to solve, nothing to prove. You are safe and you can let go. Imagine one last time the sun beyond the horizon still steady, still shining, while your side of the world is wrapped in night. Imagine that steadiness continuing whether you're awake or asleep. Imagine the planet turning slowly, like a lullaby that never runs out. And if you like, imagine the warm light of morning waiting patiently, not demanding anything, simply arriving when it's time. Now you can drift. You can drift the way clouds drift. You can drift the way waves roll in and out. You can drift the way a candle flame stays steady inside a lantern. And you can let the last thoughts soften into silence. May your rest be warm and easy. May your breath be slow and gentle. May your mind loosen its grip. Good night.